Come on, I need to know. What did you think of my poems? Tell me.
I loved them.
I think the main thing is trying to be true to the period, but make it appealing to the contemporary eye. We try not to be a museum show. We're not trying to show you exactly what it looked like. We're trying to show you how it might have looked. So it's really about picking the right period details and the ones that really feel connected to the look of the show.
What a crazy day this is.
Not as crazy as what's going on up here.
It was really about evergreens. Homestead was the home base in a way for the show. Now we're adding another one, and how do they play with each other? The first thing I did, I went with the producer and with the set decorator up to see the real evergreens in Amherst, Massachusetts, and just saw what historically the building looked like. What was really important about evergreens is that it is very different than Homestead. Evergreens, it's described architecturally as a Victorian Italianate villa. So it's asymmetrical, serpentine, luxurious, and mysterious, and very, very different than Homestead. I ended up picking a palette that's blues, greens, and golds. I think originally it was scripted to be red, but I really thought red would be hard to sustain for the entire season. I went through a lot of versions of it, and this combination of this kind of bluish green and gold just seemed to have a lot of depth and was really, really different than anything you'd see in Homestead. Obviously, wallpapers are a huge thing in the show because almost every room has a different kind of fabulous wallpaper. It was really a lot of brilliant research of fabricators that exist today that are still hand blocking wallpapers the way they would have been in the 19th century. So we had a really interesting choice of historically correct, but also just really stunning wallpapers from all over the world. They fly them in from France, from England, and also vendors here in the United States. And going with the fabric cover also just had a different depth. It has a slight sheen to it, where the other wallpapers in Homestead are flat. The fabric cover is actually something we printed. The pattern itself is from another wallpaper that we found, and getting the scale was actually a long process. We actually blew it up into 5 different sizes, held it up in the art department office to try and understand how it would look in the space. And the other thing was the selection of the paintings. We chose Hudson River School paintings and reproductions of European masters, which would have been the style of the time, would have been fashionable for Sue to have. Especially the Hudson River schools, there's a lot of depth and they just kind of almost emanate light. So there was something about that combination of the blue, the sheen of the fabric, and those paintings that kind of define the look.
What if I don't want fame?
There are no period opera houses in New York City. We knew we had to find a theater where we would put the set of La Traviata and the lobby and all the other scenes. In the beginning, we never thought we'd find a suitable space. And then we went to the Lowe's Theater in New Jersey, which is a movie house from the 1920s. It was built right before the Great Depression. The theater itself was entirely inappropriate. It was 3,500 seats. But walking out of the space, when we were in the lobby, I realized the lobby had the shape of an Italian horseshoe opera house. So it had the bones of the set. So the solution was to design and build the opera house in the lobby. Once we decided that would work, and I kind of figured out where the stage would go and how we'd do it, then there was probably a 2 or 3 month process while we were doing other things that we were slowly prepping that, figuring out how to recarpet, redecorate the lobby space. I designed the set for La Traviata in a style of the 1850s, and all the lighting. And so there was a long process, many, many scouts measuring, brainstorming how to turn this lobby into an opera house. Certainly, like many things in the show, all these period things have a contemporary version. In actual fact, taking a water cure was very popular at the time. So there was lots of research of these crazy water cure treatments. So we wanted to be able to recreate them in a space that was kind of a luxury retreat. So we looked at a lot of the Gold Coast mansions from the beginning of the last century in Long Island because they're grand and they give you the scale we needed. And the one we ended up using, it had kind of a luxurious scale, but also its austerity to it, with a lot of stone walls. And I felt like that was an appropriate place where we could put in the spritz tubs and the dunking tanks and the steam bath and all these kind of different water treatments that they would have actually done.
There's someone that I need you to meet. Sam Bowles. This could be the man to put you in the spotlight.
Visual effects is really important in the show. There are the typical things like explosions and fire, and visual effects is always helping us with period details, like when we're in locations, turning electric light into candlelight, erasing modern things that are 20 feet in the air that we don't have time to go take down or cover. But then there's bigger kind of conceptual things like the printing press, and in this season also the maze, because Emily gets lost in an infinite hedge maze, seemingly. This is not something that existed in the Northeast United States and not something we could build, so I had to work closely with visual effects to figure out how much of a maze I had to provide that would create enough to be shot, but that they could extend into the final image we see.
I don't want you to worry.
How can I not be worried, Henry? Our lives are at stake.
We have this wonderful exterior location called Bethpage Historical Village, which is in fact a collection of historical buildings. And we build the exterior of Homestead and Evergreens there. And the barn is actually a real barn that's right between those two sets. And it is a real 19th century barn. It actually houses sheep when we're not shooting in it. So what logistics is getting them out so we can shoot. And then it's really about how we use that space. And it had kind of two big functions in season 2. It's where Henry is working on his paper in a much more humble and also secretive way, because it's dangerous for him. And then for the big fun party is happening, all the elements are period, but it kind of took on definitely like a modern dance party vibe.